Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot testing. And we've definitely got a pretty interesting one out here today. It's one that I recently picked up and haven't tried yet, but a number of you guys have requested to see it, and I definitely want to test it and see what it does, because it could give us some surprisingly good performance, or it could be a little bit on the gimmicky side as well. But I've got a bunch of stuff out here today that we can test it with, so I'm definitely excited to see what it can actually do for us. So for the shell I've got out here today, I've got some of these. These are Aguila Minishells that are a 12 gauge buckshot load. As you can see, they're a 1 3/4 inch shell, and they're loaded with 7 pellets of 4 buck and 4 pellets of 1 buck. So kind of a stacked load or a mixed load. So definitely pretty interesting. Apparently it says it's a 5/8 ounce load, moving about 1200 feet per second, but we're gonna test that and kind of see what performance we actually get out of it. And as for the setup I've got out here today, I wish I had a shorter tactical style shotgun, but I just don't. So I'm working with what I actually do have, which should get us in the same ballpark. That being, I've got my Remington 1187 out here again. However, I have a cylinder bore choke in the gun, so no constriction at all. So the same as what a quote-unquote defensive or tactical style shotgun would have here, just with a longer barrel. So with that being said, as for how we're going to test it today, I have the paper set up downrange here. I figured we'll start off by shooting a shell through the cylinder bore choke at 7 yards, just like a potential defensive scenario, because that's probably most likely what you would be using these shells for if you were actually using them for anything other than messing around on the range. So we'll start off at 7 yards through the cylinder bore choke and just see what our spread looks like as for a defensive pattern. Then, just for the sake of it, we'll back it out to 40 yards and shoot a pattern and see what it looks like as far as a potential hunting style shell goes for something like a fox or a coyote. It might do good enough to be used in that scenario. It might not. I don't know, but I definitely think we should at least test it and see what it does. And then, of course, I do have water jugs out here, so that way we can put a round into the water jugs and see what kind of energy dump we have. And of course, I have my chronograph, so all the shots today will be across there so we can get our numbers and see how close it is to the box posted velocity. But with that being said, let's head over to the target. We'll start at 7 yards with the cylinder bore choke and see what kind of defensive performance we might actually be able to get out of this shell. Okay, so I'm all set up at 7 yards. We're going to be aiming at that white spray paint mark, so let's shoot it and see what kind of spread we have for a defensive distance. Alright, so let's take a quick look at this spread for our 7 yard cylinder bore pattern. Now, we saw a total of about a 9-inch spread there, and the farthest point is from the left pellet all the way over to that right pellet there. This big gash up here was the little gas seal piece, but seeing as though we have 10 pellets on our paper right there in that 9-inch spread, that means we have 1 pellet missing because it's a 4/7 load. That adds up to 11, so 1 pellet is not on this paper unless it went exactly through the same hole as one of these other pellets. Either way, 9-inch spread from a cylinder bore choke at 7 yards. Not too terrible, would absolutely do the job, but I don't think it's as good as what the federal shorty shot shells did either. So just out of my own curiosity's sake, let's spray another dot over on the top right, and I'll put an improved cylinder choke in the gun, which is potentially another defensive style shotgun choke that you might have. So we'll put another shell through that, be an improved cylinder. Will it help our pattern any? I don't know, but just for my own curiosity's sake, let's try it and see what we get out of it. Alright, so now let's take a look at our improved cylinder choke group, and clearly that woke it up immensely. Now, from the widest spread there, from the left pellet to the right pellet, is 6 1/4 inches, so definitely way better. And we still saw 1 flyer over there to the right. That little bit more choke absolutely woke it up as compared to the cylinder bore over there. So that's definitely promising for a hunting load. So I'm going to make the executive decision here that we should spray 1 more spray paint mark on the middle there, and at the same 7 yard distance we'll put the full choke in the gun and see how it performs. And based on what we see as for results here, that will kind of determine what choke we should use at 40 yards to see if it's a good hunting setup or not. So let's put the full choke in the gun. We'll spray 1 more mark on here, pattern it, and take a look and see, and then we'll make our decision as to what we're going to test for our hunting range. Okay, so let's take a look at our full choke group here. Now, it does look a little bit more splotchy than our improved cylinder choke up there, but it's actually right almost pretty much exactly the same measurement of right at 6¼ inch group. And that is from the left pellet there to the lowest pellet. It's right at 6¼ inches. The same as that group up there. However, it's clearly a lot less even. And once again, 10 holes in this paper. And if we had one flyer that didn't hit the paper from being right there, I don't know what to tell you, but I think that this box is wrong. I think this is a 10 pellet load, not 11, because it clearly says we're supposed to have 7 of the number 4 buck and 4 of the number 1 buck pellets. And clearly we have 10 holes, so something doesn't quite add up. But either way, I think that gives us a really good opportunity here to put an improved cylinder choke in the gun, and we'll back it out to 40 yards and see what kind of a hunting pattern we would have for something like a fox or a coyote or something like that. So let's throw a new fresh sheet of paper up here. We'll back it out to 40 yards. We'll put the improved cylinder choke in the gun, and we'll take a shot and see what our pattern looks like. Okay, so after that 40-yard shot, this is what we got as for a result here. Now, of course, the white dot was the point of aim, and we did have all 10 pellets on this piece of paper. Based on our previous tests, I think the box is just wrong in saying we have 11 pellets, so I'm going with 10, and we have all of them on the paper here. Now, as for a spread, we measured from that far left hole over there to the top right hole all the way up there, and that's a 24¼ inch spread at 40 yards with a pretty decent looking core area right there. We've had normal 2¾ or 3-inch buckshot loads shoot worse than that by a long shot. That is really surprisingly good for an improved cylinder choke with a mini shell like that at 40 yards. I can't complain too much about what we saw right there. That would absolutely do the job on any kind of coyote or fox that would be running through there. I don't think I'd want to use it on a deer, but for predator hunting or like even groundhogs or something like that, yeah, that would absolutely work out to 40 yards. So overall here, I am pretty impressed with what this load's been able to do so far. Okay, so let's take a quick look through our chronograph numbers here and see what it gave us. And I was rather surprised. We saw almost what the box was claiming of 1200. We were a little bit below that, but they were pretty consistent overall, which was relatively surprising for that shell, in my opinion anyway. So for a high, it gave us 1148. For a low, it gave us 1114. That gave us an average of 1129 with an extreme spread of 34 and a standard deviation of 14. So definitely pretty good for what that shell is, I'd say. Little bit under the box posted velocity, but I'm not complaining too much about that kind of consistency. All right, so after seeing that pretty impressive performance, let's see what kind of energy we're actually dumping on a target here. I've got 2 water jugs set up over here. Let's shoot around into them. I'm not necessarily worried about catching any of these pellets, but I definitely want to see what kind of energy we do have. So let's head over here and shoot them and see what kind of explosion we can get. Okay, so yeah, we definitely have a decent amount of energy here. I mean, this jug over here was our first one in line, so definitely launched it pretty good. We got a good hit right there in the middle, and it very obviously went all the way through the jug. Big blowout, came out the back, no problems whatsoever on that one. And our second jug is closer over here to the back of the barrel, and we had another good entrance with good energy dump, and the pellets did come all the way out of the back of the jug here. Nothing stuck down in there as far as pellets goes. So 2 jugs at least worth of penetration is pretty good in my book, I'd say. Plenty good enough for any kind of groundhogs or coyotes or foxes, that's for sure. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that performance today? Definitely pretty interesting and a fun thing to test. We got a better pattern than what I was honestly kind of expecting out of these shells. You could absolutely hunt with them for predators or anything like that out to 40 yards, I'd say. So overall, I'm pretty happy with how they did. But as always, leave your thoughts about them in the comments. Is that about what you expected as for performance? Were you a little bit surprised? And if you've tested these Aguila Minishells, what has been your experience with them? Let me know all that down in the comments. But with that being said, I've got a bunch more testing coming y'all's way, so stay tuned. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff to the channel if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested. But I'm going to get back to it. So I'll see y'all in the next one.